Welcome to Atlanta Community Profiles, a show about living in Atlanta. Atlanta Community Profiles is hosted by Lou Wieland, who will talk to experts who know this ever-changing city and its real estate industry. We'll talk to mayors, community leaders, and commercial and residential real estate experts. And now, here's Lou Wieland with this week's Atlanta Community Profiles.
Hello there and welcome to our show. My name is Lou Wieland. I publish the official relocation guides on Atlanta that are distributed by the First Multiple Listing Service of Atlanta. We have publications for the metro area. We have one for North Fulton, published in conjunction with the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce. One for Gwinnett County that's published in conjunction with the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. One for Cobb County in partnership with the Cobb Association of Realtors. And one for Inside 285. The publications are available at all of the real estate brokerage firms and chambers of commerce in the metro area at no charge. So stop in, pick up a free copy. They're on my website as well, AtlantaCommunityProfiles.com. I'm also a commercial realtor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Georgia Properties, focusing primarily on multifamily housing. So if I can help you with any of your investments to round out your portfolios, to invest in commercial real estate, I'd love to be of assistance. I'm an expert on Atlanta. I've lived here since 1980, and for 25 years, I've published in magazines about Atlanta that are used by all of the realtors. So as you know, every week we interview community leaders, people who are contributing to the well-being of our city. And every now and then we interview one of the top doctors at Emory Healthcare, and in a different area of involvement. And today we are very privileged to interview the distinguished Dr. David DeLurgio, MD at Emory Heart and Vascular Center. Welcome to the show, Doctor. Glad to have you, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Lou. It's a pleasure to be here today.
He doesn't, if you're watching on Facebook, you might say, well, that guy looks like he's in high school or college, or maybe he's in graduate school at Emory, but he is one of the top docs at Emory, and I guess he's learned how to take care of himself through diet, exercise, good nutrition, because he looks like $1 million and in such a distinguished senior position at Emory. So you're going to tell us how to do that too, right? How do we look? Tell us what you've learned about looking young and fit and being successful.
You're absolutely right, Lou. I came to Emory in 1995 with my wife, and since then we've raised 3 wonderful children here in Atlanta, all of them going through Georgia Tech. A little shout out there. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and a big part of our conversation will be how to keep your heart healthy.
And look young and trim like yourself, despite being older than you look, for sure. Now, just for an overview on Emory, Emory is one of the top medical service providers in the world. People come from all over the world, really, to go to Emory. It's the official kind of definition is integrated academic healthcare system committed to providing the best care for our patients, educating health professionals and leaders for the future, pursuing discovery research in all its forms, including basic clinical population-based research, and serving our community. As the clinical enterprise of the Robert W. Woodruff Health Services Center of Emory is dedicated to unifying core purposes, core values, and strategic direction. So that's the academic definition. It doesn't begin to describe how spectacular your work is in terms of excellence and integrity and value that you've contributed to our people and throughout the world, really.
Well, Lou, we're very lucky to have an institution like Emory here in Atlanta. Emory is a fantastic institution. As you know, they have a wonderful undergraduate education program and multiple graduate education programs, of course, including a wonderful School of Medicine where I'm a professor, and then all the training that goes into specialty training. There isn't an area of medicine that Emory isn't deeply involved with, and we're very fortunate to have that facility here.
Mm-hmm. We sure are. I happen to be a patient at over there on Peachtree Dunwoody Road and also in Johns Creek for different reasons. But the vision of Emory is to be recognized as a leading academic and community health enterprise differentiated by discovery, innovation, education, quality, compassionate and patient and family-centered care. So that is kind of an overview profile. And Dr. David DeLurgio must be Italian descent, right? It's not Irish.
That's right. That's not an Irish name. My mother's last name is Irish.
Okay, really? Well, he earned his degree from the University of California, Los Angeles School of Medicine, completed his residency at Emory School of Medicine. He joined Emory, as he mentioned, in 1996 and served as director of arrhythmic, is that the right word? Pronunciation? Rhythmic Center and Electrophysiology Lab at Emory University Hospital in Midtown before relocating to Emory St. Joseph. We're going to be doing a lot of long 3 or 4 syllable words that are not easy for me to pronounce, but we'll definitely get your assistance with that. So let me ask you this question, Doctor. We'll start with like Vince Lombardi would say, this is a football. What got you into this line of work? Anyway.
Well, early in my training, I was exposed to some very interesting physicians who specialized in the management of cardiac arrhythmias. And arrhythmias are rhythm disturbances of the heart. And when I first got interested in cardiology, I really didn't realize that arrhythmia diseases were such a large part of cardiology. So it was through exposure to patients back in my original training at UCLA that I became very interested. When it came time to get the actual specialty training, I was drawn here to Atlanta and into Emory, where I trained under Dr. Jonathan Langberg and Dr. Angel Leon, 2 very well-known electrophysiologists who are still involved with Emory intimately. They helped shepherd my career and provide the training that I needed to become actually a trainer like them as well. And so we've had a very successful career here with Emory, training physicians to participate in this specialty of clinical cardiac electrophysiology. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about electrophysiology is the actual cellular mechanisms that we all have in our hearts that help conduct electrical impulses in a way we take for granted. Our hearts are pumps. I think everyone knows that. And everyone knows that the heart has a vascular system, arteries and veins. And to me, that's the plumbing of the heart. But few people realize that the heart also has an electrical system. So a simplified way of looking at a cardiac electrophysiologist is I'm an electrician for the heart.
Well, that's interesting. At my age, a lot of my friends are having heart issues. My dad actually had an artificial something or other, a pump and
like a pacemaker?
Pacemaker for like 12 years, where he died at 97. I think he had it in when he was like 85, but kept him alive for 12 years. But how prevalent is heart disease and heart-related issues? And what are some of the contributing factors to it?
Well, many people might assume that cancer is the number one cause of death in Americans, but actually the number one cause of death in America and in the entire civilized world is cardiovascular disease. And some of those deaths occur to gradual deterioration of the heart. Others occur suddenly. We call that sudden cardiac death. But this is very prominent. Approximately 350,000 Americans die every year from sudden cardiac causes. Now, on the plus side, I think it's important for your listeners to know that treatment of heart diseases has improved dramatically over the years, in large part thanks to the research and development that goes on at institutions across our country like Emory. So we can expect better outcomes than maybe our parents expected, and certainly much better than their parents expected. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but this is a big area of focus. How do we improve cardiac outcomes and prevent death from cardiovascular causes?
Okay, so how important is diet and nutrition to proper care of the cardiovascular system?
Taking care of your heart should be job number one. Now, everyone wants to look good, but you should also think about what it takes to make your heart look good. So it starts early in life, actually, with your parents helping you develop good eating habits, good exercise habits, things that you can carry through for the rest of your life. Now, there are some things you can't do too much about. For example, you can't really change your gene pool. If you were born in a family that has a tendency towards heart disease, that's a problem that we have to deal with. And there are ways to deal with that. But it starts with good habits, good eating habits, good exercise habits. We like to ask our patients to trim their weight if they're overweight, to maintain their weight if they're at a good weight. We focus on many other factors of daily life, such as avoiding smoking, not drinking to excess, common things.
Well, I heard not drinking too excessive. My producer is saying, hurry it up, but I just want to, maybe we'll come back. Recently, I saw that even one drink a day is not good for you. Earlier, I had heard one drink or two drink could be good for you. Now I've heard no drink, do not any have no alcohol. So anyway, when we get back after the break, we'll address that. Stay tuned. Don't have any alcohol sponsors, so not to worry.
I'm going to take a little.
No bacon. No bacon, no alcohol. All right. Are you ready? I'm ready. Welcome back. I'm Lou Wieland with Community Profiles magazines and websites, and talking to Dr. David DeLurgio. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. I don't have any Italian ancestry, so I'm Irish and German, so I can't pronounce Italian that well, but I'm learning.
Well, I think you did it better than I can just then.
So very good. Great to have you on the show, Doctor. And we're going to learn a lot about the cardiovascular system and how do you take care of yourself so you don't have any issues. But you said something that in the first segment that was particularly noteworthy, in that the cardiovascular issues are the leading cause of death more than cancer or anything. And why is that? Why is that so prevalent?
Well, many of the causes of cardiovascular disease stem from metabolic processes in our body. And in the United States, we have a large gene pool of our Northern European heritage where certain tendencies, for example, towards elevated cholesterol exist. So many of us, many of your friends, will suffer from elevated cholesterol. Elevated cholesterol in and of itself does not cause problems that we are aware of until over time and combined with other factors can result in atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis used to be called simply hardening of the arteries. This process can damage our vascular tree and, of course, can lead to problems such as heart attacks and strokes and peripheral artery disease. We have a tendency towards this based on our gene pool, some of us, and in addition, as a culture, we've often gone down the pathway of bad behavior, such as cigarette smoking, which can markedly accelerate these problems, sometimes dietary issues, and poor management of our health in general. You may be aware that there's a tendency towards diabetes worldwide that is growing, particularly in countries like the United States. This has to do with dietary excess, weight gain, and being overweight for prolonged periods of time. Diabetes also accelerates heart disease. So when we think about heart disease, we have to be aware that there's much we can do to prevent it, but of course, treatment becomes a big issue for many of us as well.
My mom died at I think 82. My dad died at 97. He exercised and ate right. She didn't do either one of those things. So I guess maybe there is something to the diet. She died of hardening of the arteries, actually. She had too much cholesterol. She was a great cook, great pastries, and baking greatest pies and cookies. How much does that contribute to the hardening of the arteries? Should you avoid sugar altogether, or what's the formula?
Well, the best advice we can give you at this time is to find out what your baseline is. So we recommend that people have a cholesterol panel checked during the routine physical examination. Usually a cholesterol panel will give us an idea if you have a tendency towards high cholesterol or not. Then from there, we adopt a healthy diet. If our cholesterol is mildly or moderately elevated, we're going to adopt a diet that is low in saturated fats, lower in calories in general. Some sugar, of course, is allowed, but we ask people to think of their diet to mimic one of the common diets, such as the Mediterranean diet. And this is a diet that leans less heavily on fatty foods, less heavily on meat proteins, slightly more heavily on vegetables, while still allowing fish and meat to a certain degree, and has other components such as monounsaturated fats like olive oil. This type of diet, which we all like anyways, is a good kind of starting point for understanding what a healthy diet might look like. Once we have adopted a good diet, then we proceed to further risk assessment. If a patient smokes, we have to stop smoking. It's very risky behavior. I don't think people even have an idea, if they haven't kept up with the literature, how dangerous smoking can be. And we move down to other lifestyle issues. Are you exercising regularly? Are you overweight, and can we trim weight? All of these factors will contribute to improving someone's outcome. Now, of course, if we have a tendency towards high cholesterol that won't respond to those modifications, then we have excellent medications available which have been proven not only to lower cholesterol, but also to stroke or death.
Now, you are the father of a unique procedure, I understand. If you would mind, please tell our listeners about that.
I am very happy to discuss that. As you know, I'm a cardiac electrophysiologist.
I'm glad you said that. I wouldn't have said it so.
Well, as an electrophysiologist, my main focus is on treating arrhythmias in order to improve patients' quality of life and longevity. And one of the main rhythm disturbances that I deal with is something called atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation is the most common arrhythmia that comes to patients as we age naturally. Now, atrial fibrillation can cause strokes. It's a very well-known cause of strokes, and since it can cause strokes, it can lead to major morbidity and death. Atrial fibrillation can cause shortness of breath and congestive heart failure in some patients, and it can dramatically disrupt quality of life in other patients. So how do we treat atrial fibrillation? Well, what we do with atrial fibrillation is look at the two main problems, stroke and quality of life, and try to improve both of those. We have treatment options for stroke prevention. The number one treatment option is thinning the blood moderately in order to lower the chance of clot formation that can cause strokes. And then we try to treat the rhythm itself, either with medicines or a procedure called ablation. And you asked about a newer procedure called a hybrid convergent atrial fibrillation ablation procedure. And while I did not invent this procedure, I have pioneered it here in the Atlanta area. We have a very well-developed center at Emory St. Joseph's Hospital, where I collaborate with my surgeon partners, Dr. Michael Halkos and Dr. Omar Latouf, to combine our fortes, our strengths, to give our patients a much more effective procedure that can improve their quality of life and improve their heart strength.
So, well, I'm glad that we got that over with, because that's a lot of big words that I can't pronounce anyway. But thank you for your service to the community and to the healthcare with that new procedure. And how big of how many people does that serve anyway, that procedure?
Well, thousands of ablation procedures for treatment of atrial fibrillation are done in the United States every year. The convergent procedure is a newer procedure, and we've just completed enrollment in a randomized clinical trial, which will help establish the efficacy and safety of this procedure. We are using it commercially, and it is available to patients here in Atlanta. This procedure is not for everybody. It's actually for the so-called tough cases. Atrial fibrillation is always tough on the patient, but sometimes it's easier to treat in one patient versus another. So if a patient has atrial fibrillation, I strongly encourage them to see their cardiologist and hopefully be referred to a cardiac electrophysiologist like me so they can be evaluated for their candidacy for various treatments that can help improve their quality of life and the overall strength and status of their heart.
So, how would one learn about this besides hearing this on my radio show? How do people know that this even exists, or how would they know to call you? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as you know, we are trying to get the word out so that we can help patients understand that they have options. Many patients are told that they have atrial fibrillation and they get somewhat down about it. And that's understandable because no one wants to find out they have a new heart problem. However, I try to look to the upside because I believe that our treatment options have really improved. So we ask patients to either go to the Emory website, where they can certainly find my name and all of my partners at Emory who are providing similar services. We have a very well-developed department, and at all of the major Emory hospitals, we offer treatment for atrial fibrillation. In addition, the internet and social media is an excellent way to get a good discussion going and do some research on treatment of your atrial fibrillation.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.
Okay.
What is that? Am I looking at the orange up there? Yeah, that's where you're. Okay. This is number 3, right?
This is segment 3. This will last 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay. Welcome back. I'm Lou Wieland, sitting here with Dr. David DeLurgio, MD at Emory Heart and Vascular Center. And so basically, if you missed any of the show, it's on my website, AtlantaCommunityProfiles.com, without any commercials. And basically, we are learning about how to take care of your heart. And we're learning that diet and exercise, pretty key elements of the equation. So what about walking? Anyway, somebody told me that one of the reasons people over in India don't have all this trouble is that they walk all the time. Is that true, or was there any truth to that?
Well, you know, Lou, it's really important to emphasize a healthy lifestyle. And we talked a little bit about regular exercise. It's important to realize that exercise does not have to be extreme. And it's important to know that extreme exercise can actually be harmful for some patients. So I do emphasize to my patients that they involve themselves in a walking program. The human body was built to walk. So walking, if you can do it, is a great thing to do. Walk as much as you can. Walking will never harm you, and it can only help you. Many people like to go to the gym, and in the gym, I think there are other great exercises you can do as well, such as using the treadmill or stationary bike or elliptical trainers. These are all great ways to do a cardiovascular workout. I also encourage a lightweight workout. I'm not so excited about heavy weightlifting because it does put a little bit of strain on the heart. So I encourage my patients to lift weights, but not to be doing the extremes of weightlifting. Some of my patients exercise so much it actually causes heart problems, like, for example, atrial fibrillation. We see this in extreme athletes, not your everyday athlete. And for those individuals, we actually have to dial back the exercise a little bit. It's okay to keep exercising, but we don't want to go to extremes.
Okay, so here's another key question that occurs to me is how do we monitor our heart and how it's doing? And I know people take their blood pressure, they get their own machines that they take their blood pressure really. How do you go about, how would you know, and how do you I mean, I've heard stories about people getting a stroke and they thought, wow, how'd that happen? I was in great shape. So tell us a little bit about a monitoring program. How can we self-diagnose to some degree at least?
Well, I am very excited about a lot of the developments that are happening nowadays where the patient actually has a lot of diagnostic power at their fingertips. The first step is always, though, to see your physician and find out what the baseline is. So everyone should have a regular physical. That way we know what your blood pressure is. We've looked at an EKG. We know what your heart tends to be like. Perhaps we've done some other testing on your heart. In addition to examining your heart, we may have done an echocardiogram to actually look at the function of your heart. After that, the patient is given a prescription or recommendations on lifestyle changes or encouraged to continue their lifestyle. Now, it is helpful to be able to monitor yourself, particularly if you've had some intermittent symptoms. So you mentioned a blood pressure cuff, for example. Today's blood pressure cuffs are very inexpensive, available at every store you go to. It allows you to measure your blood pressure very easily. They are accurate. They also give you your pulse rate and an indicator of whether or not the pulse is regular or irregular. The new digital blood pressure monitors also allow you to store that information so you can compare or trend your vital signs over time. This is often helpful information to bring back to your doctor so that we can make adjustments to medicines or lifestyle changes as needed. Even more exciting lately are monitors that allow you to actually make an EKG, either using your phone or a special watch. I find these to be very helpful for many of my patients who have intermittent symptoms, and they like the peace of mind of being able to make an EKG tracing, which then can be emailed directly to my office from their phone or watch.
What's a good blood pressure?
Well, that's going to vary a little bit, but the simple answer is 120/80.
But it varies by what? Your weight or age or what?
Well, Lou, you should realize that your blood pressure might be 120/80 if I measured it right now. And if I measure it 5 minutes later, it might be 130/70. And if I measure it 5 minutes after that, it may be 118/60. It's a vital sign, and it's a dynamic vital sign. Just like your pulse, it varies. But we do have guidelines for blood pressure that is too high. For example, if you have consistent blood pressure over 135 or consistent diastolic blood pressure over 90. Also, blood pressure can be too low. So we want to make sure we know if your blood pressure is normal. If not, get it normal and move on from there.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. So that was 3. Was that 3 or? No, I mean that was the third segment. Or fourth?
Yes, that was the third segment. This next one will be the second to last segment.
And how long is this?
7 minutes.
We want to shoot, by the way, towards, I don't know if I told you this, but we really want to shoot towards having all the segments same length.
We can do that next time.
Okay, please try to do that. Okay. Welcome back. I'm Lou Wieland, sitting here with one of the top docs at Emory, Dr. David DeLurgio, MD at the Emory Heart and Vascular Center. And not to scare everybody, but heart issues are the biggest. More people die from heart-related issues than any other cancer or really anything. And so basically, tell us, what is a stroke and how do we know if it's coming? What are the symptoms? And who's most susceptible?
Well, the type of stroke that we're mostly familiar with is caused by a clot that blocks a vessel in your brain, and a portion of your brain is actually damaged as a result of not getting blood flow through that vessel. Other types of strokes can happen, the other most common being actual bleeding related to a blood vessel that is either burst, for example, an aneurysm, or a clot that then caused bleeding. Both types of strokes are, of course, very dangerous, and they can cause a lot of morbidity, which means loss of quality of life and damage to your health, or mortality, which of course means loss of life itself. And we obviously want to prevent strokes and, of course, treat strokes promptly should they be identified. Now, the stroke rates in the United States are improving, and one of the number one reasons they are improving is because blood pressure is being treated more effectively. One of the leading causes of strokes is elevated blood pressure over time. So we definitely want to identify patients who have elevated blood pressure and make dietary and health modifications, and of course treat with the proper blood pressure lowering medications, and of course document we are having good results. This can dramatically lower your risk of stroke. Cigarette smoking also contributes to stroke by virtue of the way it damages our blood vessels throughout our body, including the brain. Other causes of stroke can be related to congenital causes that we're not even aware of, such as having an aneurysm in our brain. And in my particular area, the number one cause of stroke is arrhythmia that allows clots to form in the heart, which can then embolize up into the brain and cause a stroke. And for us,
and death, really, too.
And death as well, absolutely. And the number one way in that scenario to prevent strokes is to identify the patients at risk and treat them with blood thinners. If blood thinners don't work out for that patient, we have some newer treatments where we actually put a small barrier within the critical portion of the heart, which prevents the movement of clots.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is kind of a sensitive topic, but it's important, and that is the fact that obesity is epidemic in our society. A friend of mine was going through the airport in Beijing and doing a video, and all the people that he videoed, nobody was overweight in the airport. But here we have obesity as a problem. And why is obesity such a problem? And what can we do in our society to explain to people why this is so important to address?
Well, a couple of reasons that obesity is a problem has to do with being a victim of our own success. Food is so widely available and inexpensive in this country that there is no actual limit to getting food for most of us. This, of course, does not include people who are poverty-stricken. But the other component of it is the type of food that is so widely available. And of course, we realize that some of the food quality that we have available widely contributes to obesity, such as very high carbohydrate food or very high fat foods, often available as snack foods or through fast food. So it's a combination of availability and quality. So unfortunately, even people who are relatively poor and can't spend a lot on food can still spend a relatively small amount on a lot of bad food. Mm-hmm. So it's a social problem that we have. Now, for those who get overweight, we try to find a way to lose weight. And it inevitably involves changing dietary habits. Often it's just a matter of eating less, but it's complex. If I go to talk to a patient about their weight and say we need to lose weight, I have to realize that this patient did not get this way overnight. It took time and habits and types of food that they choose to eat that developed over maybe a lifetime, at least decades. And so we're trying to change habits, educate the patient as to ways that they can have a more healthy lifestyle, and adopt a way of living that will gradually cause that patient to lose weight and gain the health benefits.
My thyroid doctor is at Emory, and I have been experimenting with different dosages of Armour thyroid to keep my thyroid in check. And sometimes if I'm not having enough Armour thyroid, my metabolism slows down and I gain weight. So I just asked her if this underactive thyroid is the cause for people to gain weight. And she said, no, the reason is they just eat too much food.
Yes, you have experienced an underlying reason that you might gain weight. It's a medical reason, but for the vast majority of us, it's the choices and type of food we're eating. And I'm not all about blaming the patient for it, but rather trying to find a way to change that behavior to get better weight control.
I have a friend, and I said, well, if you just eat fruits and fruits and vegetables and, and salads, you'll live to be 100. And he said, well, I may live to 100, but it'll seem like 200. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. What should we cover that we didn't cover? Anything in particular?
Are you?
5 minutes.
Yeah. What kind of things do you think your audience would like to hear? You probably know them.
Well, I mean, the audience is very high income, well educated, a little older crowd. So this is, taking care of their heart.
Okay. Why don't we talk a little bit? You might ask it. Is there an age limit, for example? Because there are a lot of people who are 70 above, and maybe they think it can be done with that. Even people over 80 years old. Because you probably have a lot of audience that.
That's great. Exactly. Welcome back. I'm Lou Wieland, sitting here with Dr. David DeLurgio, MD at Emory Heart and Vascular Center. And doctor, when you're young, in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you think you're invincible. You think you'll live forever. You don't have to worry. You can eat anything and you can run, like crazy and play golf all day, 36 holes. But as you get older, and not so much. So tell us a little bit about aging. People who are listening to this show are better educated and a little older. Tell us a little bit about the function of aging and cardiovascular care.
Well, I think that's a very good question and an important topic, Lou. My grandfather died when he was 87 years old, and that's a pretty ripe old age, actually. But we can actually expect to live to that age. That's what a lot of us can expect. If we've made it this far, we're going to make it that far. And my grandfather said famously that if he knew he was going to live that long, he would have taken a lot better care of himself.
Yeah, it sounds like something George Burns.
He may have got it from George Burns. But I think that it really brings an important point home to us, is that in general, Americans are living longer and longer, and this has a lot to do with advances in health care and the fact that we are blessed to live in a country that has access to good health care and has access to food, have access to medicines and immunizations and all the things that can help us to live longer. So I like to get a hold of people early and try to develop really good habits. I think it's important for your audience to know that it's really never too late to work on these health issues. So I enjoy talking to patients who are in their 70s, 75, and 80 and above, and finding out what we can do to make their quality of life better going forward. I also think it's really important to realize that age alone does not prohibit us from treating these conditions. Some of the procedures I do are routinely done in patients in their upper 70s and 80s, and I have several patients in their early 90s who I've treated with fairly advanced treatments to help prevent stroke or arrhythmia. So I don't think that we should look at the obstacles of age, and we should always try to improve our quality of life regardless of our age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people might think, well, I'm getting older. I need to just sit around and watch the Braves or something, have a few beers and have some pretzels or something. Not so much, right? You wouldn't agree with that, I'm sure.
Of course not. And as we age, we're going to have some natural limitations. So, for example, some of our older patients, it's not that easy to say go out and walk 5 miles. I mean, maybe their knees are shot from all that basketball they played in college. We have to take all those things into consideration and adapt our recommendations and ideas for those patients based on what's reasonable and what will make them feel better.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's hope for everybody, no matter what your age. And if you are 70 or above or 65 or above and have not been very athletic, you might say, or active, what would be the way to get started?
Well, I think first check with your doctor to get a good assessment of your underlying health and capabilities, and then work with your doctor to carve out a plan for you. Now, you mentioned 65 and 70. That's young.
I think it is.
It is.
At my age, I think.
That you've got decades ahead of you, we hope, God willing. And all we have to do is make the most of that, and it's not that hard.
So you recommend starting out, maybe get a doctor's appraisal, like getting a car evaluated, and then beginning a program of not overly vigorous at the beginning, but maybe gradually getting involved, starting walking, maybe go to the gym a little bit.
Something we can build on.
So thank you for your service to the community, Doctor, and for the great things that Emory does as one of the greatest medical service providers in the world. People come from all over the world to your institution, and we certainly appreciate the fine work that you guys do over there.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Lou, and I'm very proud to be here representing Emory.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.